Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to talk about Christ consciousness, the awakening of Christ consciousness on this planet. I'm going to talk about also the aspect of resurrection, which is connected of course to the Easter period, and I will be also maybe explaining what is Christ consciousness in the end. So, of course, I just wanted to mention as a disclaimer that when I mention Christ consciousness, I really talk about it in a non-dogmatic way and also outside of any religious beliefs. Christ consciousness is a universal principle, and I will be talking about Christ consciousness in that way. So first of all, I just wanted to share my personal story with Christ consciousness. So it started about 7 or 8 years ago. My first encounter actually was with Mary Magdalene, and I was really guided towards her, and I wasn't searching for anything in particular, just the universe guided me towards her, and I really connected deeply with her and her divine feminine aspect. And it was only just a couple of years later, so I think it was around 2017, that I, for the first time, experienced a very strong connection with Christ, with Yeshua, and that was completely overwhelming for me, because I really had this profound connection also with the divine masculine, and the first time I really connected with the divine masculine in such a loving way. And following that, I experienced a very strong Christ consciousness activation in my body, on a cellular level, on a physical and energetical level, which really changed a lot of things for me, because suddenly I was put on this path of Christ consciousness, to experience it in a more conscious way, let's say. And in one of my videos of last year, so it was for the winter solstice, I had this vision for 2022 of a human heart surrounded by a very beautiful halo, and I saw like this heart was opening up, and just after that I had an image of Jesus, of Yeshua, also surrounded by a beautiful halo of light. And the message that came to me at that moment was really that this Christ consciousness is awakening in every human's heart, and that this portal that we experienced on the 21st of December, I also mentioned that in my video at the time, was really like an opening on that possibility of the awakening of Christ consciousness inside our hearts. So I also felt at that moment that the period of April was probably going to be the period where this energy was going to blossom the most. And I think it's also because there is Easter coming, and of course Easter is also related to resurrection. So it was really interesting to experience that, and to also see that it is coming very strongly forward again for us this year. And of course Yeshua and his family, lived 2,000 years ago, and they actually anchored these Christ consciousness grids on Earth, but also these ascension grids that we are experiencing right now on Earth. And they had this huge mission. It was not only a planetary mission, it was kind of also cosmic in nature, because it had also an effect on the cosmos. So they received a lot of help, a lot of spiritual help, and also some galactic help for this specific mission. Yeshua said, "What I have done, you can do too, and even more." And of course, this doesn't mean that we all have the same mission as Yeshua had on Earth. Of course we don't. But what it does mean is that we are also able to follow the same path, that is the path of awakening to that Christ consciousness. And this is why many souls actually, had these pre-incarnation agreements that we would incarnate in these specific times, these specific ascension times, to actually, awaken this Christ consciousness within us. And that's why also it has been encoded in our DNA. Sometimes it's dormant, and sometimes we experience certain things in our lives that activate that dormant DNA. And so we will experience some awakenings, for example. In the Gospels, we often hear that there's going to be the return of the Messiah, the return of the Christ King. And of course, a lot of Christians have interpreted that as Jesus coming back, in the flesh, or as an apparition or whatever. And this is not really the true message that was, transmitted. The true message is that a lot of souls have decided to come back right now on earth to awaken this Christ consciousness within them, and therefore awaken the inner Christ. And this relates also to what I just said about Yeshua saying that what I have done you can do too, and even more. And so this is practically what is happening right now on earth, and gradually a lot of humans will awaken to this new consciousness. And gradually the planet is going to experience this ascension where we are going to shift into much more love, much more light, and much more peace on earth. In this process, we are of course helped by the energies of Yeshua, the energy also of Mary, Mother Mary, and also Mary Magdalene, because there's also this divine feminine aspect that is very important, and that's also why we talk so much about the return of the divine feminine on earth. It is actually supporting this Christ consciousness. It is actually, the counterpart of this Christ consciousness. It is integrated into it, and it is not separate. So again, I know the church has often tried to exclude the feminine out of this Christ story, but it is very much important that we reintegrate also this feminine aspect for this awakening to happen on earth. So what is Christ consciousness? First of all, what is Christ? Christ is a being that has realized its greater self, its higher self. It is a being that also has been through this process of resurrection, which is to transcend physical death and to merge with immortality in a conscious way. And there are several aspects that we could mention about Christ consciousness. I like to talk about the Holy Trinity. So I think there are three major, really important aspects in Christ consciousness. Of course, there are others, but I really wanted to mention these three. So the first one would be, of course, unconditional love and compassion, because for me, compassion is connected to unconditional love. And unconditional love is learning to love unconditionally, which means that we don't put conditions upon the love that we offer to others. We accept them as they are. It also means to open the heart chakra and to be in this kind of embracing of all that is through the heart chakra. And unconditional love also talks about integrating oneness and realizing that we are not separate from one another. And that's why Yeshua has said, love one another, or love your neighbor as you love yourself, which basically means integrate the other as yourself, because you're not separate. And it just, leads us back to the wisdom of the heart in the end. And the second aspect is the way of service. So integrating that aspect of the ego that is serving itself and actually becoming of service to others, in connection, of course, with our souls, in connection with, our highest calling, our highest joy, to actually serve others. And also, just to mention, being of service to others doesn't mean to sacrifice for others. So it shouldn't be detrimental to us, and we shouldn't be in a form of sacrifice. We should always fill our cups first, and that's also called self-respect. And then we can be of service to others, because this is also a kind of belief, a Christian belief, that we have to sacrifice for others, or it's also sometimes related to vows of poverty. So it's really important to make the difference between being of service and actually finding a balance between what we give and we receive, and being of service in a sacrificial way, which is not balanced at all. And thirdly, we have, of course, forgiveness, which is a big one for a lot of people, I think, because, of course, it's a form of initiation that we are, called to when we are invited to forgive, especially forgive those who have hurt us. So, you know, through our human conditioning, we might be really wounded, we went through several traumas, so we might feel injustice, rejection, abandonment, or betrayal, and we are really guided to learn how to forgive these people who mistreated us. And, you know, globally, we are also invited to actually forgive what darkness is doing, you know, all the negative stuff that is happening also in the world. So it is really a path that leads to inner peace and inner acceptance, to be on this path of forgiveness. The awakening of Christ consciousness is also a path of humility. And I also just wanted to mention that I'm not sharing all of this today, you know, considering myself as an awakened being or master or whatever. I'm very far from that. I'm just on this path of evolution. I have been through several experiences. I have received certain teachings also through this path of Christ consciousness that I am on, and I'm just sharing that with you. And in the end, everyone has his own path of evolution and will go through several initiations in order really to, you know, to heal, to transmute all that is keeping us away from expressing fully that light of Christ consciousness that is awakening inside. And also this April period is, you know, related to the Easter period, which is very important for Jews and Christians. For Christians, it is really related to the resurrection of Christ. And this is why this is an energy that is very present right now. And we can connect to that energy, but again, not in a religious way. More like really realizing that there is also this inner resurrection that is happening inside us during this period. And this also relates to what I was speaking about in my last video, you know, about the 3 days of darkness that a lot of people talk about. I was saying that it's related to what is written by St. John in the Apocalypse. And it is also mentioned in different Gospels. I think it's the Gospel of Matthew or Luke, or both, can't remember exactly, where it is mentioned that when Christ was crucified, so he was crucified and then 3 days later there was this resurrection, there was actually, you know, the world went dark, so there was something that was, you know, hiding the sun. There were also earthquakes, and this whole thing was, you know, kind of taken and put also into the Apocalypse of St. John. So that's why he also talks about this darkness or this dark sun. And this relates maybe to what actually happened at that time, which was probably an eclipse. And some people interpreted that as, you know, it's going to happen again. There was going to be, something's going to hide the sun. We're going to experience 3 days of complete darkness on Earth. I was explaining that in the last video, but I'm just going to mention it in this one again. It's really on a symbolic level that we need to see this. So in the same way that we talk about resurrection, it's really in this symbolic way that we are experiencing this inner resurrection. And that's why also the energies of Christ consciousness are so present in these times. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to subscribe. It really helps this channel to grow. And I will see you next time for a new video. Sat Nam. Take care.